And welcome to the Untold History Channel, everybody. Today is Monday, the 30th of October, one day before. I don't even like to say that day because I'm not a fan of that day. But tomorrow is the day that everybody gets to hand out candy and dress up funky outfits. But today we are joined by a weaponized weather journalist extraordinaire, Raphael O'Neill, aka NOLAbutterfly. She is. I have gotten to know quite a bit about this young lady, and she is fantastic. Now, a lot of you know that I did the weather in the Navy. I was as an aerographer's mate in the Navy. I was now I didn't I wasn't as an aerographer's mate. What I did was I observed weather and I plotted charts and I did weather balloons and things like that. I wasn't really into forecasting and things of that nature, but I wasn't naive to a lot of the things that happened within the weather sphere. I was a lot smarter than most people, but Raphael, I have an idea, probably exceeds my knowledge when it comes to weather. But her and I will probably be able to have a decent conversation, and I will be able to understand her. So we're going to go for about an hour and 20 minutes or so, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the phone lines. For anybody who has questions that they'd like to ask to Raphael for, just about weather modification and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that right now. So Raphael, I'm going to let you kind of take the floor here, and I'm going to let you lead the way here.
Okay. Well, what do you think you want to start with? Because there's a lot of places we can go. So just put me on a point and I'll take it from there.
Okay. So why don't we do this? Let's, you were talking quite significantly about some of the weather that happened in Lanai. Or Lahaina, rather.
Lahaina, yeah.
Lahaina. Why don't we talk about that a little bit, and then let's bring it back and talk about some of the weather modification, because I think you have some really good footage of satellite imagery and whatnot about how Doppler radar is used in the United States to to really control weather. It's not HARP that's well. I'm sure that there's a lot of different. In fact, why don't we do this? Let's do a grand overview about how all the different components are utilized and put like obviously you've got cloud seeding that's done by aircraft. You've got HARP that electrifies the ionosphere and causes that. Right? I'm guessing. I'm spitballing.
Sure. Well, I didn't know if we were going to start with the contrail aspect, chemtrail, contrail, aerosols aspect of climate, because it's such a tremendous conversation, and we thought maybe we're going to talk about it in a couple parts. So
we can do that. I was just thinking of a grand overview.
The grand overview is it's more than a binary weapon. Weather has been weaponized, and it encompasses many different areas. There is, of course, the contrail, chemtrail, aerosol element to it, and then there's the element electromagnetic element to it. So what I like to do, first of all, is to correct the climate change narrative, because that's a really important thing to do. And I started out learning about chemtrails, and then I researched it extensively through a podcast. I wrote a children's chemtrail book called Funny Clouds: A Chemtrail Tale, and it was like I said, I told you this, that I'd written it after NASA came out with their new cloud types for children, and I just thought that was absolutely horrific after having seen what I was told was chemtrails, you know, but I saw it with my own eyes. They were contrails. There were planes that came out on a blue sky day. Then they took the sky away, one contrail at a time, and they fanned out. And they fanned out and took over the whole sky and grayed out the sky on a blue sky day. And that, you can't deny that that happened. But yet, if you called it chemtrails, you were ridiculed. So, yet, you know, it's a conspiracy theory, and yet the conspiracy theory took out the sky. And so how much of a conspiracy theory is this? Just natural? I mean, I didn't see it every day at the time, you know, some days we do. And actually the first time I noticed it, it was even different than the whiting out of the skies we'll see regularly. But there's another component, like you'll see the ripples in the sky, and a lot of people call them HARP waves, you know, scalar waves. And my diving into the science after I wrote my children's chemtrail book pushed me into, you see, I wasn't trying to make an absolute truth of chemtrails. I knew they were real, but I didn't understand how so many people couldn't understand it. So I really wanted to understand where the deniers and the believers, what they were missing that could connect them. And so I decided to pick out the pearls of the different narratives that were out there, the things that I knew were truth and good science, to see if I can make my own necklace, because both sides were missing something that essential that would bring it together. Mm-hmm. And what I learned was that within the chemtrail community, there were a couple things that were wrong or not accurate. Like, for instance, people would say that there were never persistent contrails in the air prior to 1997 or around that time when the programming started. Yet the deniers and debunkers would say, well, no, there is. Look here. And so I would address what they were pointing to, and I would usually find even more stuff. For instance,
can I pause?
I don't know if I can share my screen here.
You can share your screen, but can I pause you for a second? I want to make a note here that you actually started off as a believer of Al Gore's inconvenient truth. I think that's important to let the audience know that you actually were of the opinion that climate change was real and bought into the narrative that you know, the official left narrative that it was all carbon dioxide.
Absolutely. You know, I don't want to say I'm a recovering liberal. I still think I'm more liberal than liberals because I have an open mind, an open and critical mind who's open to analyzing.
You're a classical liberal.
But you know, the liberal is misused. So in the sense of having an open mind, I have an open mind, but you know, the truth is the truth still, and it doesn't just sway because propaganda comes into the play. So yeah, no, I bought into the CO2 narrative, and why wouldn't I? I didn't know anything about science. You know, I saw the Al Gore movie, and I care about the Earth, so why wouldn't I follow it? Right? These scientists say. Well, scientists say a lot of things, believe it or not, but you can't cherry pick what they say. You have to look at it all. And so, and they you know, the weather modifiers, now there's two kinds of weather modification. First of all, there's the stuff that's on the books. Okay. So let's see if I can maybe, is it present? I share screen. I'm going to just share my screen. Okay. So, share screen. I could just,
you can share, or you can share an entire screen, or you can share, you can do whatever you want. Oh, you're breaking up.
Yeah, I'm going to. Okay.
It's thinking
of wanting to weaponize it. So let's look at this over here. Can you see this? Addition, these trails grow considerably. Now this was written in 1945 thereabouts.
Now, you have your Gmail showing up. You have your Gmail showing up. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay. I have to share. How do I share? Let me just go back to
You want to share the
our
tab? You want to share a different tab?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to get back to our, there we go, Streamline, and I want to share a different, let me present the whole thing. Stop screen, and I'll present again, share screen, and I want to share the whole screen. Can I do that? Screen sharing works best for a good computer.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Select entire screen. Okay, great. Share. That'll be easier. Oh, there we go. Okay, so back to our picture here. The phenomena of vapor trails behind aircraft is a good example of triggering. If the atmosphere is in the right condition, these trails grow considerably. Most striking is the report of a German meteorologist who observed and photographed the trails from only 3 airplanes over Salzburg develop into an overcast in the space of less than an hour. In the discussion of the energy for weather control, one cannot avoid reference to the possible utilization of atomic power, but adequate knowledge of the absorption and reflection of different types of surfaces, which is also known as albedo modification, will permit utilization of that other great source of power, the sun. Okay, so here you have, this is something that the deniers don't like to show. They like to cite that there was examples of persistent contrails back in the day, but they were rare. And what I've discovered is that conditions in the atmosphere have changed. This is not denied. But what has changed them is what actually is open for investigation. And yours truly has done that and come to a major realization. Now, first of all, I want you to know that I'm not a fan of pollution. All right. Airplane pollution is just, let's just say airplanes are polluting to begin with. All right. So on a good day, even without a conspiracy, you have aviation as a major source of local air pollution, leading to significant public health impacts. I was told when I was still investigating this, oh yeah, airplane contrails are, that's the big industry secret. It's highly pollutant, and we don't really want to talk about that. So on a good day, it's really the environment, health. It's not a good thing, right? So we don't want aviation pollution, and there's also contrail effect. Here's NOVA science programming on air and online. Are vapor trails from aircraft influencing the climate? And if so, should we worry? There's meteorological effects. Even if you want to say they are inadvertent, they have meteorological effects. So here, let's go to cloud formation by supercharged plane, AMS, American Meteorological Society Conference. You can see all this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So rainmaking again. They know there's meteorological effects. All right. They know that it's not just water vapor that's coming out of those trails. But let's look at water vapor. All right. Let's look at climate science for a moment. All right. And let's actually start with a NASA document, just so that we're on the same page here, because yeah, CO2, anthropogenic CO2 is absolutely minuscule compared to the greenhouse gas. This is the greenhouse gas graph that they don't like to show. That what they do is they X out 97% of the water. I'm going to assume that you can hear me. So this is the water vapor that they eliminate from the greenhouse gas pie. And what they do is they show you this here, CO2.
As that little
man-made CO2, and that's even.
So what they do is they show that little sliver right there is the 100% of the pie chart that they show.
Yeah, and then anthropogenic, all right. Man-made CO2 is even smaller than that. It's even a sliver of the sliver. And yet they blame CO2. I mean, I know, and I call this the $1 trillion secret, because I have a video out there. I call it, well, I was calling it the $1 million or the $1 billion secret or something like that, but it's really a $1 trillion secret, because there's so many agendas, so many narratives that are riding on the climate change narrative. Depopulation, pushing the jab on people to bring down populations because CO2, too many people eat the bugs, right? And so the Great Reset, right? There's a lot at stake in this narrative, right? And what they do is they say, well, climate is changing, things are warming. Well, sometimes it's cooling. It all depends on what time of the day you're looking at the news, right? Mm-hmm. But they say, well, what has changed in the last so number of years? Now, there's a lot more to the CO2 narrative, and we can get into all of that. But what has changed? Well, you know, carbon emissions, carbon. Okay, great. Let's blame carbon. And what has, you know, carbon dioxide, first of all, is not carbon. It's not like soot. It's not like ash in your fireplace. Okay. It is a benign gas that all life depends on.
Yeah. There's a thing called photosynthesis.
Yes, photosynthesis. We love it. We're here. You and I are here because of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the plants. Yeah, and I'm not for the destruction of forests. I'm not for the destruction. I'm not for pollution of any kind.
And let me pause you for a second there, because there may be, and I don't want to take for granted that people in the audience know what photosynthesis is. Photosynthesis is essentially plants breathe carbon dioxide and emit oxygen, and humans breathe oxygen and emit carbon dioxide. It's a synergistic relationship. And actually, the more carbon dioxide that you have in the atmosphere, the higher crop yields you get on any given year. So
it is a beautiful thing. And actually, historically, we've done better when we've had more CO2 levels in the atmosphere. There are more CO2, more plants. And also, historically, through carbon cores, we know that, just going to wax poetic on carbon for a minute, that it's not carbon rises and then heat rises. It's heat rises and then carbon rises. And also, we know that carbon levels are not the same worldwide. They are different in different places. And I personally know there's a white sheep Rothschild who is kind of the black sheep of her family, but she's able to do some good things with scientists as long as she does it on the down low. And what they found, what they do is they go around and buy up land that Monsanto cannot milk anything more out of, because they glyphosated it, rounded up to death. And what happens is the soil is like our gut. We need good bacteria, not bad bacteria in there. And what it does is it creates a lot of bad bacteria, and the good bacteria goes. But when they do soil transplants and when they put in the good bacteria in there, get the bad bacteria out, within 3 years, the CO2 levels go back to normal. So I'd like to say that there's more to the CO2 narrative than that. But still, the CO2 narrative is insignificant, as you can see here. Right. And again, this is just the total CO2. This doesn't include the sliver of the anthropogenic man-made CO2. So it's really disingenuous to say that, oh, well, it must be all the industry that's putting out CO2 that's causing these changes. Like it's a narrative by default, because, and how do they get away with saying this? I mean, it's not like it's not science that water vapor is a greenhouse gas. Well, maybe water vapor doesn't drive climate. Oh, sure it does. Because here we have NASA, and I'll show you the document in a second, saying even small changes in the abundance or location of clouds could change the climate, not the weather, which is local, the climate, which is global, more than the anticipated changes caused by greenhouse gases, other greenhouse gases, because clouds are condensed water vapor, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. And that's NASA in their importance of understanding clouds. Now, let's see here if I have that handy. The importance of understanding clouds. See, All right, I'm not making it up. There it is on the first page. Even small changes in the abundance or location of clouds can change the climate more than the anticipated changes caused by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. And yet you're expected to ignore and deny chemtrails are important because that's just a conspiracy theory. But you know how you get taken seriously? By your local meteorologist. And I know because I've challenged them locally, and I finally got one to admit that I know more about climate, contrail science than they do. Especially, well, I'll save that story for another time. I caught her and I had asked her what makes a contrail form versus what makes it form and persist, like the conditions, atmospheric. And when you talk about chemtrails, they dismiss you. They just laugh at you. But when you call them chemtrails, when you call them contrails that form jet cirrus and have weather modification effects and albedo modification, then they're listening to you and they're a little more humble. And so when I asked her what makes one form and persist, she says, well, when the air aloft is cooler than the jet exhaust, you'll have a contrail form. When it's warmer, then it'll persist. I said, when is the air aloft ever warmer than the jet exhaust? And she threw her hands up. She was just throwing out some bogus stuff. This is our local meteorologist. I'll spare her name so that she doesn't get embarrassed. But what I'm saying is that these people, and I mean, look, most of them don't know. They're just after their paycheck. They're not going to question anything that's uncomfortable. And those that do know, let's just look at this here. This is a gag order. All right. A gag order, Weather Service employees tethered by illegal gag protecting employees who protect our environment. So those that figure it out, they're not talking. And in fact, I've had weather meteorologists see my stuff, know I was right, and then they were scared the hell out of they stopped talking to me just because, not because they didn't believe it. They saw it, but they didn't know what to do with it. It's just too much. And so, let's just say, okay, contrails, even, let's just look at some contrail science here, right?
Well, while you're
contrails have a dehydration. They differentiate in the debunking world. Oh, yes.
I was going to say, while you're doing that, I wanted to show a picture of of something that I thought was actually rather sinister. This is a cartoon. This is a Tom and Jerry cartoon. I'm going to present it here. And look there. It literally, they're programming the children to accept that contrails are real, or that this stuff is legit. Have you ever seen that in the cartoons?
Right. There was a lot of stuff put back in later on. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of going back and rewriting the history books. I mean, contrails dissipate quickly, but we know that they could persist. It was just a less frequent phenomena. And so they like to say, well, they're plausible deniabilities as well. Things have there's more plain. Oh, let me just here's another airplane.
I didn't mean forgive me. I didn't mean to throw you off. I didn't mean to throw you off.
No, that's okay. That's okay. No, not at all. So we have, we know that the contrails can affect the weather. Hold on here. Let me just skip through these things. They have patents to suppress contrails. All right. Let me just tell you that. I thought I had it lined up here somewhere, but I obviously don't. But, let's just go here. Also, aerosols. There's a minimization of aerosols in the narrative drive a significant portion of Arctic warming. These are not the sciences that they want to acknowledge. This is a NASA study. They try to take it down now because they're hiding their trails, pun intended. But we know that airplane contrails is worse than CO2. It's not,
Wow.
there's more than one study here. And yet we have even more. We have, you even have the Smithsonian Institute magazine that said at one point they came out and said airplane contrails may be creating accidental geoengineering. Now, geoengineering is a catch-22. It's when they say, wow, the weather is so bad, we're going to have to spray chemicals. We're not doing it yet. We're going to have to spray chemicals in the sky to trap the heat, to block the sun and cool the earth. But what they don't admit, all right, dissipating haze from plane exhaust alters how sunlight reaches the earth and may be unintentionally affecting our climate. Now, geoengineering is the deliberate modification of the sky for the purpose of cooling it. And actually, there's a lot of different things that included under the blanket of geoengineering. But if it's not deliberate, it's not geoengineering, is how they look at it. So it's the definition of geoengineering includes the deliberate modification, altering of the sky. So they've been denying it for so long, and yet, aircraft vapor trail control system, they can actually stop. You better believe that if the military is going on a mission, that they're going to be able to control their vapor trail because they don't want the enemy to see them coming, right?
Correct.
I mean, you got to believe it. They have it right here. Here's a patent. Okay. I'm sure there's others. They know how to control and suppress it. So why aren't they doing it? At this point, any vapor trail in the sky is deliberate. Okay. Let's just eliminate.
Let's take it. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, in World War II, when it was there weren't jet engines, they were piston engines, and you had B-17s and B-24s that were doing daylight raids over Germany. You would look up in the sky and you would literally see countless trails of white trails that essentially led Axis fighters right up to where the bombers were, because it was very easy to spot. And what she's saying here is that with jet engines also can put out a contrail, but they have the technology to diffuse the contrail so that they cannot spot the aircraft from a distance. You can't get an aircraft, an intercepting aircraft is going to have to use radar to go find them, as opposed to tracing a visible line in the sky that goes right to that aircraft.
Right. So all of this, like, even if there's no sprayers, the actual act of controlling a contrail or choosing not to control a contrail is deliberate at this point, especially when you see such a phenomena that the world over has been complaining about forever, and then you have cloud formation by supercharged plane. They study these things. Right? This was 1921. Persistent contrails have existed for longer than most people can even know in the chemtrail community, but it was not super persistent, and it required very specific conditions. Now, let's just go here. We can go down the list here. NOAA spreadsheets listing weather modification.
How far back did weather modification, or when did weather modification begin?
Oh, in the 1800s, there was a general who took a balloon up and threw some chemicals out to try and alter the weather. There's a long history of wanting to desiring to control the weather. There was the art of rainmaking came from, after battles, they would notice that sometimes there would be these rains, and on the battlefield. And, it was like to wash down the blood, the spirits washing down the blood of the dead. But then when there was a cannon fodder, that had fired and all that, they thought maybe that there was something with the chemicals that were interplaying with the clouds causing rain. So and you have was it in 1908 or 1918? Charles Hatfield. Okay. It might be 1908. It might be 1918. Please excuse me right now. I don't have everything committed to memory, but it's all in my notes and it's all been talked about and it's out there. Charles Hatfield, look him up. San Diego County wanted to end this drought and they offered $10,000 to anyone who would do it. And Charles Hatfield said, "You're going to be paying me. Just give me some room and give me a couple days." And he went out there with his chemicals and it started to rain and rain and rain and rain and rain. And it overflowed. I'm sorry?
1915. Hatfield was so confident he could bring rain to the parched city that he secured a deal, but agreed only to accept money for each inch of rain that he produced, $1,000 per inch to be exact, up to 50.
Well, he had a lot of rain that came down and he flooded that area. And there was death and to livestock, I think to people. And he said, "Well, y'all wanted rain and I gave it to you, so I expect payment." And they said, "Okay, well then you get the liability for what you did." And the liability he didn't want. And actually the liability is the reason why we don't know about weather modification as much as we do to this day. When they say, "Well, why would they?" Well, we would know about it. Why don't we know about contrail, weather modification projects that are benign? I'm talking about on the books. Okay. They're out there. You can find them out. You can, you can see things. What is it? So over here, that's the top secret history of weather modification. Hold on. Geoengineering. Did I might be, anyway, there was a list of, outline of weather proposal, October 1945. Anyways, there's a list you can get. The World Meteorological Organization, lists every year the countries that are participating in weather modification research. Now, there's also been somebody quoted as saying in recent years, and this was in like 2010, countries have gone from weather modification research straight into the application of it. So they just kind of skip the research and go right to the doing of it. But they said in 2013, the World Meteorological Organization had a list of countries involved in weather modification projects that year. They do it every year. And that year, though they had done it before, they didn't do it that year. The NOAA, National Weather Service, and the NOAA did not report any weather modification projects in the United States. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't any. It just means they didn't report it. And yet in that same report of the World Meteorological Organization, they said some players have been conducting weather modification projects, all right, not research, projects for over 50 years, such as in the States, the hydroelectric companies. Now think about that for a moment. Who has interest in the rain? The hydroelectric companies. So they like to also downplay the effectiveness. They always say, well, more research is needed. We don't know. More research is needed. We don't know. And yet we have hydroelectric companies that have been doing weather modification projects for over 50 years. And yet we have the military that weaponized Vietnam, that weaponized weather in Vietnam, extending the monsoon season with just a few simple cloud seeding projects that Congress didn't know about for a decade. They took out the Ho Chi Minh Trail and they were trying to degrade enemy forces and demoralize and wipe out bridges, and it was successful. It was the Livingston tell the tale.
I heard that they the year before, I hear that 2002 was the worst rainfall year in the Middle East for 1,000 years. The year before we invaded in Iraq.
Yeah, convenient, huh?
Yeah.
They've been doing it around the world for a while. They create drought in Africa and then come and like sell them the solutions.
And then they get a whole bunch of band together, a whole bunch of band members together and talk about a Band-Aid and sing about how we are the world and
right.
Yeah.
So so actually after Vietnam, the United Nations said, they made a treaty saying no weaponizing weather. We can't use weather on, on anybody else. It's a no-no. They didn't say anything about doing it in our own countries, and I still think they do it in other countries. It's just super, super secret, and they have different modalities. Okay, and so all of this research led me to my own research later on. We're gonna get into that, but here's the outline of weather proposal, October 1945, by Vladimir Zworykin, and he describes a series of he had a lot to do with radio as well. Anyway, the importance of accurate, detailed weather. Prediction, whether regional or worldwide, cannot be exaggerated. In the first place, exact prediction makes it possible to plan ahead to avoid consequences of unfavorable conditions or take advantage of favorable weather. A foreknowledge of intense heat or cold or floods and droughts would benefit agriculture. Anyway, this is what about knowing, but weather prediction. Now, in the second place, weather prediction based on scientific knowledge of the factors influencing weather would be a first step in any attempt in the control of weather, a goal recognized as eventually possible by all foresighted, whatever that is. Anyway, so this was, the history of desiring, of wanting to control weather. What we have here goes back. It goes back. If I can amplify this so we can see it. Oh. Sorry. And control of space means control of the world. From space, the masters of infinity would have the power to control the Earth's weather, to cause drought and flood, to change the tides and raise the levels of the sea, to divert the Gulf Stream and change temperate climates to frigid. Lyndon B. Johnson, right?
My favorite.
We even have...
That was a joke.
Yes, we even have...
You're by the way, just FYI, I'm not complaining,
and eventually weather control.
Real quick, when you change images and whatnot, the do this. Try not to talk when the weather or when the image is loading, because the image loading and you trying to talk is competing against each other, and you're cutting out.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is Kennedy, 1961. We propose further cooperative efforts between all nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. And there's a lot more. In the 50s, you had oh God, I really should pull up my timeline of weather control, but weather modification history. I didn't know how much we were getting into it here, but in the 50s, Texas, they did weather modification projects in Texas, and the Texas cattle ranchers sued the Board of Weather Modification in Texas at the time, because they said that the project stole their rain. Another fine example of limiting the liability, because there's always winners and losers when you're changing the weather, and those who are on the loser end are not going to like it. And so there's always a reason to keep it on the down low. And once it's on the down low, well, then it's open game for weaponization or whatever you have, They also, here's an interesting one. So this is of the human dimensions of weather modification can move along either one of two lines. A possible modification, such as precipitation, induction, or lightning suppression, can be assumed and an effort made to estimate what the consequences would be in a society. Where modification is tried, as in seating above a hydroelectric plant, right? The effects upon power production downstream and then the generating network may be traced. So here we have the tie-in to hydroelectric plants and seating. So just so you know that when they talk about when they talk about weather modification, the deniers, the chemtrail deniers, call contrails different from cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is when they have these flares and they do this, and they differentiate it. But weather modification is weather modification. There's a lot of ways to get there. There's a lot of modalities, but it all leads to the same thing. So here, let me close this. Airplane contrails that may be creating accidental geoengineering. We had that one. No, it's not accidental. Oh, clouds like blankets trap heat and are melting the Greenland ice sheet. So these contrails, it's not just blocking out the sun, it's trapping heat in. It's making weather warmer. It's not allowing the UV light to the whatever particles bounce back up to escape, to let that heat go. And therefore, it's when I went to the first American Meteorological Society conference I went to, and I interviewed the meteorologist, and we said, well, what do you think about geoengineering? Oh, it's very dangerous. We don't know what the outcome is. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? But it might be necessary if things get bad enough, if climate change gets bad enough, if global warming gets bad enough. They all have the same tagline. They all have the same exact what's that word when you only give it to the media the way you want it?
Propaganda.
The same. Yeah, no, it's like a snippet that you want to make sure that it's not coming to me right now, but you want to make sure the media doesn't quote you wrong. So you only say one line over and over again, no matter what the question is, so that they don't take you saying something out of context.
Gaslighting? No,
not gaslighting. It's a soundbite. Okay. They all have the same soundbite. They're all singing from the same, song sheet. They all got the memo. Okay. And they mean it. They're like, oh, we're scared of that, but it might be necessary. And so we've had this ramping up of the narrative for a great many years. Although, we have a history of weaponized weather. This is a book here. It's an okay. I'll close this up because it doesn't actually have a link here. But the Committee of Science on Science and Technology, House of Representatives, hearing geoengineering parts 1, 2, and 3. All right, in 2009. All right, they've been talking about this for a while.
Now, I'm going to let you. Excuse me for a second. I'm going to let you. I'm going to pause myself for a second. I'm going to stop my screen, and you go ahead and do this thing. I'll be right back. Give me like 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. So as you can see here, they've been talking about geoengineering for a while. Now let me see if way back. Okay, and then over here you have that aerosols may drive a significant portion of our Arctic warming, but that's not what I'm looking for. Here you have Yale Environment, how airplane contrails are helping make the planet warmer. This was 2019. Well, that's not helping in geoengineering, is it? Here's an old document, Weather and Climate Modification. Let's see what year. Do we have a year on this? 1965. This is 19. Report of the Special Commission on Weather Modification. And let me scroll this down here. 2 approaches to the human dimensions, conflicts of interest. There's always been progress and prospects in weather and climate modification. There's always been, as long as there's been cloud seeding, even cloud seeding, which is benign, because those are usually, when they're on the books, they're done for, to end a drought. They're not done to create a drought. Those projects are not on the books, but there's a lot on the books that, why don't they teach us in school? That if there are benign projects and it's something that helps out, then shouldn't we all know about it? It's because they don't want the public feedback and the blowback from the public getting, they don't want to put a limelight on what is. And yet a lot of people say, oh, that's crazy, weather modification. No, it's a part of our history. And it's a very large part of our history that's just missing from the forefront of our knowledge. Some people, I didn't even know about cloud seeding until 2010. I didn't know about cloud seeding during Katrina, which I went through. And Ron has heard about this. I went through Katrina in 2005. I didn't know about cloud seeding at all. I had never heard of it. And yet it's been going on for decades and decades. Let's see here. Oh yeah, we have.
I'm curious.
Inadvertent weather modification by ship. Oh.
I'm curious how geoengineering had an impact on Katrina.
Well, this leads into the second part of the weather modification narrative, which takes us out of aerosols and water vapor and into the other element besides. So you have, why do they ignore water vapor? How do they get away with ignoring water vapor in the climate science debate is because they say that there's no anthropogenic driver of that. So therefore, we're just going to ignore it, which is very disingenuous, because if it's a large player in climate, we need to acknowledge that. I mean, the sun can affect water vapor. You know what else can affect water vapor is volcanoes underwater. Like last year, we had the Hunga Tonga volcanic explosion, all right, in January of 2022. And that released massive amount of water vapor. So, there's the water vapor is an important part, even naturally, but then you have aerosols and then the condensation of clouds, which clouds affect climate. Remember the NASA document? Even small changes in the location or abundance of clouds can change the climate more than the anticipated changes brought about by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. NASA in their importance of understanding clouds. Well, what else affects water vapor? Now, this is where, we hear a lot about HAARP, here listing of weather modification programs in the United States. You can go to zerogeoengineering.com. All right, this was 2018 weather modification projects. But that's just what's on the books, all right? And, geoengineering has been a study for a long time. And, oh, look at this one. I mean, let me see if I can up this. Can I? Okay. It's not gonna. All right, let me just shrink it. Sorry about that. And then go back to. Okay. This is the Royal Society. It's an issue of a 2014 Climate Engineering, Exploring Nuances and Consequences of Deliberately Altering the Earth's Energy Budget. And what they're showing you is an Earth full of contrails, right? Chemtrails, contrails. What's the difference? Because all contrails are chemtrails, right? First of all, let's get it right, okay? They're not forming on pixie dust, all right? They need condensation nuclei. And that comes from the jet exhaust, which does have a lot of the additives that we're seeing in our soil and all that. The aluminum, strontium, barium, all that isn't a contrail jet exhaust. But let me see here if I can. But they're showing you what looks like jet cirrus. Looks like contrails taking over the Earth. Jet cirrus is just contrails that's fanned out and creates albedo modification. Albedo modification is when you alter the reflective property of a surface on the Earth. You might not even alter it, but it's the reflective property of a surface. So snow has albedo modification. So altering albedo modification is supposed to deflect sunlight. And this is what, but never, all this is trapping heat in. All this is trapping heat in. And this is the Royal Society, and they're talking about this. So it's very disingenuous to talk about geoengineering but then completely ignore, and to talk about global warming or climate change, and then just completely just forget to talk about the climate changing effects of these man-made clouds. It's the most disingenuous lack of science. And yet there's still more to the equation, right? So we have clouds, we have aerosols, but what manages the clouds and the aerosols? Especially the clouds, aerosols may drive a significant portion of Arctic warming. Formation and radiative forcing of contrail cirrus, right? So radiative force of the radiation that comes off of the contrail cirrus. This is all studied. It's all studied. Method for weather modification, vapor generator for weather modification. We have some cloud makers on the ground every day. And this is where the Weather War 101 was. What's that?
That's a patent.
That's a patent. This is, whether this is in use or not, that they said it was abandoned, but we see every day, we see clouds coming out of power plants, and not all the power plants, but certain power plants more than others. I've driven through rain that is that's come out of a power plant. When I was going to the American Meteorological Society conference in Texas in 2018, I was going to ask them about what I noticed, which I'm leading into, right? We're leading into the electromagnetic component here, because that's the other thing. What affects water vapor? Microwaves. Now, microwaves isn't necessarily like, hey, I'll put my coffee, this tea actually, put my tea in the microwave and now it's boiling hot. Things don't have to come to a boiling hot point to be affected by electromagnetic microwave frequencies. All right, there's a lot of different frequencies in the range, and I don't have the numbers on them all. I do have some sheets that talk about the different frequencies coming out of the Doppler, out of cell towers. There's a fluctuation range. There's all sorts of things you can do with frequency, because we're all energy, frequency, and vibration. Thank you, Tesla, right? But we know this every which way. I mean, even our cells, our atoms don't touch, right? It's all energy, frequency, and vibration. Like what repels, what attracts, but yet it doesn't form a solid wall, but creates a force nonetheless. And we know that like 5G and EMF competes with cellular communication. It's all frequency, and that these are the problems, is that you're interfering with frequency-based life forms. But so let me close some of these out here. Here's inadvertent weather modification by Chicago Northern Indiana pollution sources. All right, this is like a power plant that made weather. Oh, it's inadvertent. We have, when was this first? In 2013, but we have so many more examples of this. And then Weather War 101, who I interviewed before making my discovery that we're about to lead into, would show this in his work. You can actually look him up, Weather War 101, all one, no spaces, all one word. He has years of showing these 100-year floods that come out of these monstrous water vapor releases from power plants, from very pinpoint sources, and you could see it on the radar every day, like just these clouds that come out at one point. And these are when you pin it down, they're coming out of power plants, and you could see it with your eyes. Some days you don't see it, some days you do. They like to say that it's inconsequential, or it's inadvertent. And there's been snowstorms. Let's see if I have any of this here. I wasn't prepared to go into all of this. Oh, here. Yeah, I do have this. Freak snowstorm. Nuclear power plant causes freak snowstorm. Okay, so we've documented this, but officially, but it's happening every day. And look, in the American Meteorological Society conference, there's a group of people, I forget the name of them right now, their job is to monitor the power plants daily, in case there's any radioactive stuff. They know what it's doing. They know what it's doing. They just don't write a paper for every time that there's water infused during Harvey. Where did all that astronomical water come from? Well, Weather War 101 documented it all coming out of the power plants. Now, you get this water vapor, and now there's another, and then you get these aerosols that can actually, because they have a dehydrating effect, they can actually form boundary layers, or they can bring in clouds. They can lay tracks that brings in weather as well. It all depends maybe on the cocktail, maybe on what else is going on with the electromagnetic component. Now, a lot of people talk about HAARP, and I don't have any HAARP images here, but do I have HAARP images? No. But that to me, and it's not that HAARP doesn't manage the ionosphere. Indeed, the Air Force is on record. We can show a video of that maybe at the end when you show the little teaser to part 2. There is the Air Force. It's the HAARP committee, appropriations committee, and they had the Air Force saying, well, we got a lot of use out of HAARP, but we don't need it anymore. We're moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere. Now, first of all, why is the Air Force managing the ionosphere? And what does HAARP do? HAARP is an ionospheric heater. It's I hope I don't just totally mess it up now, because I'm just all over the place, and sometimes it takes me a minute if I don't have the notes in front of me or I haven't said it in a while. But high atmospheric aurora research project, is that it?
Here, let me play let me play the Air Force admitting to the use of HAARP. I have the YouTube here.
Okay, and stop the video before we get to the acquiesce. We can pause it and then get back to it after I do the intro. Okay.
Okay. I'll have you tell me where to.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Where to pause it here. Let me share my.
Okay.
A couple of questions here about HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Several of you at the table have a little bit of a piece here. As you know, this is located up in Alaska. It's currently funded by the Air Force Research Lab. It was formerly funded by the Office of Naval Research. One of the prime customers is DARPA, which is currently running experiments at the facilities here. So questions to several of you this morning. I'm told by the president of the University of Alaska that the Air Force has pulled its support for the facility, and they're taking steps to demolish it or take it down this summer. He's making the argument that there is other opportunities for us, and is trying to find a path where the university might be able to take title to the facility. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Prabhakar. I understand that a lot of folks here on the committee probably don't understand what HAARP does. I think most Alaskans don't really know what HAARP does or why the agency is involved in it. So a very brief explanation, and then a more direct question: would you be disappointed, or would you lose something if HAARP were to go away?
Senator Murkowski, as I think you know, one of our programs has been using the HAARP facility for the research that it's pursuing. And my understanding is that we did get value out of that interaction. The P in DARPA is projects, and we're not in the business of doing the same thing forever. So very naturally, as we conclude that work, we're going to move on to other topics. So it's not an ongoing need for DARPA, despite the fact that we had actually gotten some good value out of that infrastructure in the past.
Understood. Then to Dr. Walker and Mr. Schaefer, then, Dr. Walker, your agency is currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HAARP?
Thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HAARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and
Stop it for 1 second.
experiment campaigns up there, and have.
Yes. I stopped it. Can you?
Maybe it was 1.5 speed. Maybe we should just slow down.
You want me to slow down for this one? Okay, I'll slow down for this one. Yeah, all right, that's fun. That's a good idea, because this is the crux of it.
finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. And, but that work has been completed. The Air Force has maintained the site for other government agencies to use for several years now. And with DARPA completing their project, that's our last government customer that we have in the site. We have put out a call government-wide for other agencies that had interest in managing the site or taking it over, and including going out to academia and seeing if there was any interest there. We have gotten interest from the university in Fairbanks. However, the interest we have is that they will run it if we fund it, which is unfortunately in this fiscal environment we're in right now, this is not an area that we have any need for in the future, and don't see that it would be good use of Air Force S&T funds in the future. So our position has been that if there's not somebody who wants to take over the management and the funding of the site, then the Air Force has no future need, and that we do plan to do a dismantle of the system in the future after we make appropriate notifications.
When you say in the future, do you anticipate that it would be this summer then, or would there perhaps be more time for the university to try to figure something out?
We would prefer to start this summer. We would like to get the critical equipment out of the site before the winter. The harsh winter in Alaska does lead to a very costly winterization to maintain the site, and we'd like to avoid that if we can.
Okay. Mr. Schaefer, if you have any comments on that?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm torn on this because my background is as an atmospheric scientist, and I think the
Okay, I think that's. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to show my my video on the internet, or like if I showed. Not that I'm going to repeat this, but
no. I
else on my internet, will it be as choppy? Or?
That was just the video that I found about the U.S. The Air Force admitting to the use of HARP. So I'm back on. I shared your screen and you're back in control.
I don't know if it's. Okay. It's a little choppy on my end, so I don't know if there's a technical issue or if that's just on my end.
Yeah, it's probably on your end. So do you want to, you have several tabs open. Do you want to have one of your, do you have a preference?
No, now I can hear you just fine.
So your screen is visible to me right now.
Well, let me see here. Oh. Close all. All right. I don't know if that's going to help. It just close a bunch more. Hopefully that does it. Okay. They've moved on to other ways of managing the ionosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And what are these other ways? So first of all, there's a lot of HARPs out there, and I'm not saying they don't use HARP. They probably use it a lot. They could use all the other 8 in the world, or who knows how many there are in the world at this point. Honestly, people have mapped them out. It's hard to know when they're using it. I mean, you can see a lot of people think when they see the signature in the sky that they're actually seeing HARP in action. But the manipulators of the weather, as you could hear, it was DARPA. It was a big player in this, and they would love nothing more than for you to think it's HARP, because I'd been hearing about when I interviewed Weather War 101, who talked about the power plants, is that there was another aspect. And I never thought that I would be able to really make sense of it until I noticed when I was, sorry, here, to climate, that there was another element. I was paying attention to the hurricanes, right? I have a little bit of PTSD from Katrina. And so in 2017, I was paying attention to the Hurricane Irma. After I was actually tipped off to Hurricane Harvey, I was the first one to mention Hurricane Harvey reforming in the Gulf before the meteorologists did, because I had a source in the military who tipped me off that they were told to pack their bags, that the storm was going to reform over the Gulf. And sure enough, it did. And the military was ready around the Houston area. So how do they know? How does the military know? But the meteorologist doesn't know. I'm able to get a tip on it. And
Wow.
let me just back up a second, because I also met the Army captain,
Which
he who looks fine.
Which hurricane was that?
Well, that was Harvey. It was when I called before the meteorologist, because I had a tip off. But before that, I had met another veteran who was actually homeless. But my boyfriend at the time had talked to him and said, "Whoa, he'd given him some work, and he heard his story. He's like, you know what, you need to talk to my girlfriend. She's looking into all this kind of stuff." And he was the Army captain that was ordered to bring as many body bags to New Orleans as he could 11 days before Katrina made landfall. He
Wow.
brought 5,226 body bags 8 days before Katrina made landfall, 115 miles out of New Orleans, and it was New Orleans. And he thought at first it was going to be a terrorist attack when they first ordered the body bags. And then he heard 8 days out that there was going to be a storm, and it was coming to New Orleans, and they knew with a 210% accuracy because of satellites. Now, that's what they told him. And of course, what I would come to find out later on, well, they might have used satellites, but that wasn't their main component, and they're not going to tell you what their main component is, because they don't want it into the consciousness, because the main component is this puppy right here, this bad boy. This thing right here. This is NEXRAD at work. Sure, it's what the weather meteorologist uses to show you the weather at night.
Yeah,
See
the
this little thing in
Doppler radar.
here?
Doppler radar.
Yep. Doppler radar, NEXRAD, Doppler radar. They have these radomes around it, but it's a radar. And what it does is it sends out a signal, and then it comes back. And they're not supposed to leave the beams pointed in one direction for too long, according to their own literature. And yet, when I was paying attention to Irma after Harvey to see where it would go, I noticed the meteorologist said, well, we've got some interference here with our Doppler radar because of the storm. And my ears perked up, because I had just interviewed Weather War 101, who not only talked about power plants, but about the tornadoes that Doppler radar could form. And very few people were talking about the Doppler or triangulating on it. We had a guy named Dutch Sense who did a great job of pointing out the HARP ring.
I know I know who Dutch Sense is. I used to follow his channel a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, he failed to mention they weren't HARP rings; they were Doppler rings. And if he was studying a weather map, he should have put that together.
Well, the thing that he always kept talking about scalar squares, and I'm like, dude, what are you talking about, scalar squares? But anyway, that was the scalar squares is where he lost me. But he had some pretty decent information, but he
called out Joplin before anybody else.
Right. Yeah, he's not wrong on a lot of things, but there was a few things that he was missing.
Well, that was a very big key, the Doppler radar.
Yeah.
So this clip comes from Weather War 101. This is in 2013. This is KAKQ in Virginia. And you can see the concentric rings around the radar. Okay, there's a radar right here. Here's the weather around it, concentric rings. And this is the weather we're seeing.
One of my
every day.
One of my guys in the chat says that Dutch Sense can't even broadcast anymore.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Then he got into the earthquakes, and I just never, I was out of it. I had enough stuff going on with the weather. I didn't really wrap my head around the earthquakes, but this is a map of the Doppler radars. Where are they? Where are they? I'm looking right at them. I know I am. Oh, I didn't pull it down here. They're all over the world. So let me share my, sorry.
Somebody asked me about Hurricane Ida.
Radar. It's funny. He put radar on his map, but then he denied. He ignored the evidence that radar is affecting. Yeah. Oh, I have Ida. So what I noticed,
you're breaking up there. You're breaking up there. Start from scratch. You said you have Ida. You're breaking up there, Raphael. We lost her. I think her internet connection is kind of poor. I'm actually going to I'm actually going to try to find something here. Hurricane Ida. That's Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Ida. Let me share this screen here. So, Sus, you were asking about Hurricane Ida, and it hit New Orleans. What year was this? 21. Came right up through Jackson, Mississippi, and then right up into Boston. That's nasty looking right there. I sent a message to Raphael to let her know that we were waiting on her to come back. Which cast? What do you mean, which cast? I'm not sure what you mean. Carbon.
All right. I'm so sorry here.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're no, you're fine.
So apologies here. Which one's this? What are you checking out?
I'm showing Hurricane Ida from I'm sure I've got
Together.
the gov with showing Hurricane Ida, how it just like had a direct impact on New Orleans.
Yeah, they all do. They all do. And then push it away. Let me share screen. Hold on.
Now, does the do the Doppler radars, do they draw it in, or do they push it? Do they push it in a certain direction? I mean, is it like a tractor beam where it sucks it, or is it a does the Doppler radar systems act as like a like a magnet, like an opposite magnet, where it keeps it from going in a certain direction? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Well, there are some talking heads in the chemtrail community that would like for you to think it just has. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're.
Can you hear me?
I didn't hear what you said, but you said there was some talking heads, and that was about all I got.
Are you able to hear me right now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. So there's some talking heads that would like you to believe that there's a, when they're cornered into it, and this is within the chemtrail community, they'll admit that there's a repelling effect. But this is disingenuous because yours truly has the evidence through my years of documenting these hurricanes where that I've also correctly predicted the landfall of hurricanes. What I noticed was not the repelling effect of the Doppler radar, but the beam pointed in the direction of the radar and of the hurricane, the radar beam, and the eye of the storm going right into it. One after the other, after the other, after the other. And I have years of that. I have hurricane after hurricane, more than one Doppler radar in a row. And this is a statistical impossibility that must be answered to. And the American Meteorological Society conference folks at the NOAA tent, I have that in the mix of my movie, talk about how
What did forgive me because you're breaking up there, and I want to make sure that I get this question out. What made Dorian stall over the Bahamas? Here, I'm going to do this here. Raphael, are you there? Yeah, her connection is poor. Yeah, I'm gonna bring her back, and I'm gonna. I've asked her to to not share the screen, but to just come back and I'm going to open it up to phone calls. So if you guys want to call in, if you guys want to call in to the show, there's the telephone number. So if you want to call in and ask Raphael some questions. In the future, I think what we'll do is I'll have you send me the things you want me to share, and then that way there will be a compete, because I think your connection is a little it's not sufficient to handle both.
It might be the memory on my laptop. I'm sorry about that. I did clear my my cookies and all that, but it might not be enough.
It's okay. It's all learning. It's all learning. So
I just want to say that these storms can absolutely the beam intensifies to the weather when it comes through. It comes back, it like strips ions or something, because when it goes out the back end, it's even more intense. It can stop a storm. It can bring it in. Like, it just allow the weather in. It's make low pressure areas a high pressure area where you just see the clouds rise and evaporate. So whatever front's coming through will have to go around it, or it'll break up if it goes through it. And then we see it also creating wind that triangulates over the radar. And next time I'm on, after we take these questions, when we do another show, I'll be able to send you the links, and you'll be able to show these example, and I'll narrate and show exactly how that's done.
Now, you guys, if you want to call in and ask her questions, now's your chance. So you're not going to get this opportunity anywhere else. So
I want your biggest skeptic too.
Come on in.
Biggest skeptic, or somebody who can validate something.
Come on in. Call in. Don't be afraid.
So in the meantime, when I was screen sharing, I wanted to show you that there was a China Post, or the big China outlet, talks about China and Russia banding together for controversial atmospheric heating projects.
Mm-hmm.
We have other countries that have talked about steering hurricanes or monsoons, but it's never anything we're doing. And of course, we have Acapulco now. Let's just talk about Acapulco for a moment, because, God bless them. They're in hell right now, and they're going to be for a while, those that survive it. Do you know that there was no rain that came onto the land? It was just all wind. There was water from the sea being driven up. And of course, you got the 88 degrees of the water was 88 degrees. It went from a tropical storm to Cat 5, worst storm ever. The history books are being rewritten. But there was no wind reported. There's an interview I can share with you. It said the guy had all his people down there. Not no wind, no rain, no rain. There was plenty of wind. It was like a tornado, like a huge tornado that came through, because there never has been a hurricane with no rain. Although in Lahaina, let's get back there, people said the wind kicked up right away. There was no storm. There was no. I hooked up that interview I did where you mirrored that. Thank you so much, because I always fight censorship on these things. And I'm on my second YouTube channel because my first one was taken down. But Dr. Kathy, she went in for coffee that day in Lahaina, and she didn't know there was a storm coming. She didn't know that. And all of a sudden, the wind was really bad. And then she's there. And then, everything that happened there, there's more than just the weather. There's all the elements that stink to high heaven. The Las Vegas police chief, the fact that they were redirecting people into circles. We don't have to revisit that, but there's a lot of, so if it feels like your husband is cheating on you, he's cheating on you. Okay. When you have all these pieces of evidence coming in, and then there's these sudden winds, well, yours truly can show you on our next episode exactly how they make these winds with the radar. And I'll cue all that up for you to show next time we're on.
Yeah, and guys, the telephone number is on the screen, and I'm waiting for people to call in. So I have not had any calls in yet. So if you've tried to call in and it's not working, then let me know. But I've had nobody call in yet.
It is. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to process. Just where we're at right now.
But don't be embarrassed to call. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
we
no
want
stupid question.
Yeah, don't be embarrassed to call. Don't. Okay, somebody says I'm calling.
Okay,
So,
good.
I have I'm using Skype, so I have the ability for international callers to use the email address, and the people in the United States and Canada can use the regular telephone number. But I wanted to hear what you had to say while we're waiting on this call to come in. I wanted to hear what you had to say about Doreen, and why it just stopped over the Bahamas for like 3 days. Here we go. Here we go. Hello.
Hey, Ron.
Hello. How are you?
Pretty good. How you doing, Ron?
Very well.
Great show, man.
Can you hear us, Raphael?
Yeah.
So what's your
Hi.
question?
Hey, I had a.
What's your name?
Yeah, my question is. My name's Bill.
Mike A. Bill. What's your question for Raphael?
Yeah, my question is that not that I discount what she's saying. My question is what is the purpose of them doing so much weather manipulation? And is it attempt to, like militaries attacking each other this way, or are they attacking their own population?
Well, unintention. When I'm seeing the radar allowing the devastation of a city like my city, New Orleans, let's just take that. And then when I'm seeing my government not allowing our neighbors in Atlanta and in Texas come and deliver supplies like they did in La Haina, like they're doing in Acapulco, I'm seeing a deep state agenda that is letting Americans stay on the roof till Thursday when the storm was on Monday, and yet we can send aid across the world. So what is the purpose of letting people out to dry? What is the purpose of stopping aid to come into the country, into the disaster area, while you're not doing anything? What is the purpose? And I don't think you and I are going to understand psychopathy, and we may not understand the agenda, but I think it's not just like one government versus another. I think it's deep state versus, it's not the government down at City Hall that's doing this. It's not, it's not our boys who signed up patriotically that are doing this, but someone has got the switch on the Doppler radar, right? And who owns that? That's actually a joint operation. You've got the Air Force, you've got the Navy, and you've got DARPA that's involved with that. And it's a matter of public record. It should be. I mean, it should be accessible. Who had the controls on the Doppler radar? Who decided which direction, or is it just automatic? Well, it's all programmed at this point. I think it's AI. When you see, it's not just hurricanes, okay? Why? I already shared some of the slides earlier. I don't know at what point you came in, but there was, the Robert F. Kennedy, JFK that talks about weather control, Johnson. This was the goal. This is the desired goal, to be able to control the weather for military purposes like they did in Vietnam, but also for benign purposes if you're well-intentioned. But when you have the deep state that we've gotten, and I think it's all like after World War II, when we got a lot of those Project Paperclip scientists and Nazis, and there was a lot deeper deep state within our own boundaries. And who was it that said, I am controlled for this great, which general? I'm concerned for this great nation, not so much because of the forces without, but the forces within. I don't have all my quotes lined up, but there's forces that we are the greatest experiment of freedom there is. First of all, this America, right? We if you're going towards global government or anywhere near that, why did you do a global lockdown? How did all these people fall down in a lockstep with this agenda that came out of well, it started in China, didn't come out of China, came out of globalist think tanks, as the lockstep document had shown. So why would people do this? I mean, then you have business interests and competitors. Like, look at all the land grab Catherine Austin Fitts did an article about all the land grab every time there's fires. Why would anybody set fires that are super, like, why would they use dues? Why would they do any of this? There's benefits to it, right? They clear the slate, they drive the climate change narrative forward, or the climate change narrative is an excuse to cover up their desire. I can't exactly tell you what the intention is at any one given time, but you can tell a bird by its feathers. If it smells like a pig, it's a pig. So that what they're attacking these cities, and that's being done with the radar. Like, sometimes you can see it deflecting, and sometimes it deflects just to send it up to the next one. Like you've had it skirt the waters. And sometimes I wonder if they're not just playing ball with other countries. Like, okay, I'm going to throw this to you, see what you do. Okay. But never take a cow to market for just the meat, right? You got the milk, you got the hide, you got the horns if you got the daddy bull. I mean, there's a lot more than so many aspects come into play. And we saw them keep the rain off of Australia while they lit it on fire. There was a cloud at one point that was the shape of Australia, the negative space. You could see Australia in a cloud all around. I'll show you that picture later on too. But they were keeping the rain off with radar because they didn't want those fires to be put out. They wanted it to burn. Well, what's going on over there? Then they have China that they owed a lot of money to, that they were paying with reserves, but they couldn't access the reserves where there was a wildlife preservation, right? So I mean, we owe a lot of money to China, but I don't think it's China versus America. Honestly, I think and you can see I could see that I think deep state players are cooperating across a lot more borders than we would like to really acknowledge or admit. That's my personal theory. But I have reason to believe that there's a lot more, it's like 1984 and George Orwell. They always keep three powers. Two will always fight against one, and then these two will come and then fight against the other. And then it's all about controlling the people. And they have this very, very powerful climate change narrative that's a cover up. And that's also pushing the depopulation narrative, the reduce CO2. Well, CO2 is you, it's me, it's us, humanity, and
right.
All life is CO2. So I don't know I'm not a psychopath. You're not a psychopath. It's really hard to understand the reasoning behind psychopathy, but it's a power. Like, why does a little boy burn an ant with a magnifying glass? Because he can. Because it's cool. Because it's power. Right. Because it's a thing to do. Right. And he who controls the weather.
Yeah, I understood that. I was just curious if you had any documentation, like something that was running internally that you ran across, that they gave some excuse of why they're doing what they're doing, right?
Well, also one of the things they're doing is when they come and wipe something off the slate, they build back better. And sometimes they come back with a smart and sustainable grid. And that's putting us all online. Ultimately, they want us all online, right? Internet of Things, and they want it all.
Yeah.
That's ultimately where it's going.
And I can attest to that. What they'll do is it's a whole lot more challenging for the power of, for the people to stand up and say, oh, well, you guys are manipulating the weather, and your weather weapon is what destroyed all of our buildings and whatnot. You say that, and you look like you're batshit crazy. Whereas it's an easy weapon for the government to utilize to basically clear out an undesired populace. For example, that's in Louisiana, New Orleans.
Well, you know what they did after Katrina?
Right.
Nobody wanted, like, a lot of people were scared to come back to the places that had flooded, while people are hesitating, like, should we invest again or not, while everybody's scattered to the four corners in their hurricane. Investors come down and buy up all the property for pennies on the dollar. It is a land grab.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, casting off this called it disaster capitalism, where they destroy stuff so they can buy it cheap and that kind of stuff. My other quick question is, have you ever ran across any of the meteorologists talking about this? Because, quite honestly, I always say the only people in the world that can still keep their jobs are weathermen, because they can be wrong and still keep their jobs. But
Right, and that was a ruling.
Yeah, and they have a canny ability to, like, start predicting when it's going to, it's going to rain here at this exact time. It's going to have this storm here at this exact time. And they're using Doppler radar to do that.
Yeah, so Doppler radar is so good, it's even a little bit predictive. And although they're still wrong sometimes, but first of all, they decided that this, like, legally, that this is a job where if they made the weather people responsible for getting the weather correct, nobody would want the job. There would be just too much liability. So it's the one job that you can be wrong 90% of the time and still keep your job. That is done by design. And also there was one Nash Roberts, was it? Who was a weatherman that was really good. He was better than the rest at, hopefully I'm not getting the name wrong and mixing it up with some rock star, but he would predict the weather better than anybody else. And turned out he had a military background. So we wonder, kind of like, there's some things that we need to revisit, knowing what we know. But I think most meteorologists don't know. And in fact, in my first video, when I capture Irma, and I'm realizing this, and I capture the hurricane going into it, and then the next one, and I'm like, no meteorologist has caught this. Like, I can't believe that I'm the one that puts it together, and all these chemtrail activists. And how did I get to be the one? I mean, I looked at it for a long time. I looked at climate. I had a podcast. I had a lot of free time, I guess. I mean, it's not that I had free time. It's that I used my TV time in that direction. And I mean, for years, I just wanted to get to the bottom of it, because I didn't like the fact that people were taking out my sky with these chemtrails, and I couldn't prove it to my friends, and it was just driving me crazy. And I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And I got so far down the bottom of it, he who looks finds. And I was just committed to just looking at every piece of information until I figured it out. And boy, what I figured out, I had no idea. But when he who looks finds, and when you're on the path, the Creator, God, I don't want to offend anybody's beliefs, but God will put things on your path, because you're already, and then your ears perk up at the right thing, and your intuition goes. And Nikola Tesla talks about intuition. So then I went into Nikola Tesla's. Well, I didn't even go looking for Nikola Tesla. But how far are we going into this? Because if I start telling this story, are we doing another show, or
No,
are we? Do I get into this?
There's no rules here. So I mean, if we go to 6:30 or 7, we can go. It's until we're tired. I wanted to show this. This is the I just want to show a real quick brief clip from your the one that you showed with Dr. Forty. This is the weather pattern that comes across this front, and then all of a sudden, you see all of the Doppler radars blow up, and then it just like dissipates the front.
Okay, so let me just give you a little background before you do, or before you play it. But when you say blow up, that means the blue on the screen blows up. It becomes big. And what that is them energizing the air. So when they do that, they're actually raising the roof of the clouds. And I wouldn't mind you even showing after that, you can go back to the clip before that, that you just almost clicked on, because I overlap what this guy in Africa says is possible to do with what I've captured the hurricane going backwards into a radar doing.
Rain
Right.
aid?
So, and then when the Dopplers are down, when it's small blue, that's them releasing the energizing, and the clouds will be down low, and you'll have a low pressure area, and you can actually, and if they turn the radars off, you'll get straight bottom clouds again. But we don't have that because they're always evaporating it, or shrinking it. But when they have big blue, they're stopping the front.
Go ahead, Bill. What's your question?
Is it the blue? So the blue you're talking about, is that some sort of specific energy, like a blue laser, or is this?
No,
It's not so much of a laser. It just seems like a general energizing of the space. Now I've seen beams, and I don't know that laser is the right thing. It's these energy beams. I don't have necessarily the right technology, but it's not a laser. It's a microwave beam, and it's supposed to just be on there for seconds. But the energy around it, I don't know how they're just sending out a signal, but they can also rotate that. So it's like clockwise spinning. And I'm guessing they can do counterclockwise. I think I've spotted that as well. But that's one thing. So when they energize the air, okay, and then they drop that blue, oftentimes we'll see it so all that energy rises because it's hot. It's hotter. It's not like microwave hot like coffee, but otherwise, everything would cook there.
Right.
But it does release this energy, and there's a vacuum that comes in towards the radar here, towards the radar, where when it's released, when they make it shrink again, and we've seen wind come from the north and the south and the east over the radar as well. So I'll let you play the clip. So this is this gentleman talking about what he can do in Africa with his technology, and you'll hear him. And then at the end, I'm overlapping a clip of the storm doing that, exactly what he's saying. He's describing it for me. So go ahead.
As the audio quality on this is actually kind of poor. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll download it and then manipulate the audio for the next time. So because it's really faint. I have it all the way at its maximum, and it's not really loud enough that I think that anybody can hear it. But suffice it to say that it's real. I mean, what was going on there was real. You could see the you could see the all of the Doppler radar stations all at one time had this blue field like expand out.
Well, yes, you can actually play it while you say it, maybe.
Yeah. So. Yeah, okay, let me do that. So if you look here and you see all of these, you see that right there. You see how all the Doppler radar screens they just like they energize all of a sudden, and then you see the green, which is the front just basically just dissipates.
It breaks it up and sends it out. And this is
not only that, but on the very bottom, down down around, well, you can't see my arrow right now because I'm not, down
Down
around
around
here, the bottom radar takes it and takes the bottom part and twirls it around, and it takes the shape of the radar as it gets ripped up like Laffy Taffy on a conveyor belt. So,
Yeah, like I said, we'll do that. I'll download that again, and then I'll amplify the audio so that the next time.
well, that 5-minute video I sent you from my YouTube, I don't know if that works. I could actually hear the audio the last time for some reason, but not the second to last time. But anyway, that 5-minute clip I sent you has that as well. If that makes it any easier, I don't know. But anyway, there's a lot of radar observation. So it's so my theory, right? My theory, which is based on radar observation, and I didn't want any more conspiracies, right? I didn't need to be that girl making the claim that nobody else had figured out, because then I'm responsible for it. But I'm like, I'm seeing it, right? I've seen enough of everything else to know that how I got here so far is all accurate, right? I know the military knows about this because I had the Army captain, I got his recording and confession. And then I had another whistleblower tell me about Harvey. I was the first to call out Harvey before the meteorologist because the military knew about it. And so I knew there was an element, and I've heard about Doppler, but I really didn't understand the tornadoes and how that worked. I kind of didn't wrap my head around it. But when I discovered the hurricanes, and that was even before I cracked the code on the high pressure, low pressure, I just saw the beam and the thing going right into it. And that was enough to let me know I'm on it, And then I started studying the map and putting it more pieces together, and others brought forth other pieces. But I had to go back in time to see when this started, So we went to Katrina, and that was 5 Doppler radars in a row. So then I start looking at a list of hurricanes to see when it started. And, Doppler radar came out in 3 phases primarily. And I'm sure they've upped it and tweaked it even more so. But in 1957, in 1974, and in 1988 to 92. And in 88 is when you start seeing that high pressure ridge that created a drought in the Southwest, Doppler radar. And history starts to make sense. So I was looking at the hurricane list, and I'm like, well, they started naming them in the 50s. They've been doing this, a little bit of radar experimentation before. I doubt they had it down to a science like they do now. They must have known something about it. But I said, you know what? As I was looking, so they started naming them around the time that they started getting on the grid. But let's just see here. Let's look at a list of tornadoes, because Dutch Shintz was talking about tornadoes originally in Weather War 101. So let me study historic tornadoes to see kind of like when they started ramping up, how frequent or how often. And I was studying a list of tornadoes when one struck out at me. And again, this is very intuitive work, but the Mattoon tornado of 1918. And it was an unusually straight line that was so remarkable. And it was the largest of its time because it covered 3 states, parts of 3 states. And I said, an unusually straight line. That was just like echoed in my head. Like, when is nature unusually straight? Very, very few times you have straight lines in nature. So when they said, oh, it was multiple tornadoes that were, ripped, and then there was like whatever, but it was still a straight line. I said, well, what was Nikola Tesla doing in 1918? Nikola Tesla, 1918, and the Wardenclyffe Tower shut down. The Wardenclyffe Tower shut down? I'm like, ooh, that's significant, because it'd been inactive for 10 years prior to that. Like, supposedly it was a failure and whatever. It sat for 10 years and then they shut it down. Like, okay, well, was it shut down before or after the tornado? Oh, it was shut down after. A month and a few days after. Like, somebody is sweeping up their tracks. Like, ooh, don't close it too soon after the hurricane. But as soon as it all calms down, then you go and you shut it down. Because supposedly 2 German spies were hanging around it. Why would German spies care to hang around it if it was a dud? Because it wasn't. Well, if that's even the story, that could have been the excuse or whatever. But in any case, I'm like, well, where, in the map of America, where is the Wardenclyffe Tower? And I'm going to show this as the East Coast, if it mirrors the correct way here, right? This would be where the Wardenclyffe Tower in America on the East Coast. And where was the Mattoon tornado? And it was a few states over,
Let me see. I'm
pointing right at it.
Trying to find
Pointing.
the Mattoon tornado.
No,
Let's see.
it was a few states over, pointing over. So I overlap it in my documentary series, but it's pointing towards the Wardenclyffe Tower, plus or minus 2 to 3 degrees. And you got to, account for, curvature and whatever. It's pointing at it. It's not pointing away from it, up or at an angle. It's pointing towards it a few states over. It went right into it. It ripped the fabric of space and ripped it right into it. That's how I found Nikola Tesla. I was studying a list of tornadoes, and I looked at the biggest one, which happened a month and a few days before the shutting down of the Wardenclyffe Tower, which had been inactive for 10 years, supposedly. And it's basically an arrow pointing to the Wardenclyffe Tower. And so now you have the history we have a theory that's overlapping with history and revealing the secrets of Nikola Tesla. And then I went back and this is all part of my documentary series, which I condense into a movie. And then I have just the Tesla parts as well. Is it Mattoon? Yeah, that's not the whole line of it. That's not the whole line of it.
I was looking to find here's the Shelby and Moocher, but so this is the Mattoon tornado as it's coming into Mattoon.
Yeah.
And then this is the one that's coming with this is the Christian County. So it looks to me like this is where it starts in Pike County, goes to Whitehall, then hits Whitehall. It's intermittent. Then it's on the ground. Then it gets into Modesto and continues to go straight. Then hits to Palmer, Owenico.
I mean, look at how straight that is.
Yeah. Then Westerville, the Mattoon. Then hits Mattoon and Charleston, and then it breaks up here, and then it breaks up here, and then it reforms, and then comes back down at an angle.
Yeah, and that's the end of the thing. So I mean, you have spin-offs from there, but it rips like that line is pointed to the Wardenclyffe Tower, especially as it goes up right there. You take it the odds of it not being or further south, or
it's way straight. Tornadoes don't go that straight, like that. Not over like 3 states.
So they mission accomplished on the Wardenclyffe Tower, and then shut that puppy down and took it elsewhere. And I'll tell you what, so then I'm overlapping other things, but I haven't done this video yet because I've been looking for the Russian radar, because you know how they talk about the Dust Bowl having bad soiling practices, and it all got kicked up with what was kicking it up? High altitude winds. And what years were the Dust Bowl? I have it in my notes. Overlapping the years of Russian radar development experiment, when the Russians were. So I don't know. I looked at some of their radar facilities that they had. I couldn't quite triangulate it. I don't know if they brought a special device in on Canada or some abandoned area, or if they came from further away. And then you even have Tunguska, which was an event, which other people's theory, but I when I heard that, my ears perked up, and I looked into it, and I don't know if he did that, but he was desperate enough. He might have been responsible for the Tunguska event, which was known to be like a meteor blast, but there was no meteor debris ever found. And it was actually like a full circle of trees, which to this day are like annihilated.
And that's the one. That's the one. It was that the one that was in
Siberia?
Siberia.
Yeah. Ironically, where Nikola Tesla was. But what was Nikola Tesla doing at that time? He was desperate at this point in time because he'd been shut down for funding, right? With what's his name? Now I'm going to forget the name of the banker, but he could have developed he could have beat Marconi in the developing of the radio signaling, but he was too busy imagining the largeness of the invention, like full wireless power and communication and power, right? Not just communications, but power. And Marconi made a little device that was usable immediately without giving the rest of the toys away out of the gift box. So they went with Marconi, and Marconi beat Tesla out on the patent, which relied on some of Tesla's patents to lead up to it. But he was shut down, right? Because you couldn't put a meter on it, right? That's the thing. Like, well, where do I put a meter on it? Oh, you don't put a meter on it. I don't think that he stopped his experimentation, but he was desperate to get the word out to the world, and he was a showman. And so what did he do? There was John Peary that was out in the tundra in the North Pole going that way at that time. And he said, well, the whole world is looking that way. How about I really give them something to talk about and send out my blast from the Wardenclyffe Tower and tell John Peary to signal back when he sees something unusual in the tundra. But John Peary never signals back. He may have overshot it and landed in Siberia, ironically, where he's from. He blew out some Siberian indigenous people out of the trees there, or out into the trees. But people saw blue light arcing and a terrible blast, but no impact, and nothing impacted but a force. Was that Nikola Tesla? To this day, it's the greatest mystery, and it is the best explanation for the Tunguska event, is Nikola Tesla's desperation to get out to the world what it is he has to offer it. But he probably didn't hear about it for a few months before the news made it back about what happened. But it got discovered, and I believe that they deposed him for 2 days, and then they disposed of him for 2 days at his death. And we know that, I don't know if your listeners know this, but who was it that got access to all of his files after his death through the Bureau of Alien Property?
John Trump.
Yep, John G. Trump, Trump's favorite uncle.
Yep.
And he said, nothing to be weaponized here.
There's a rumor out there that John Trump's son is the guy from WikiLeaks.
From what? Hercules?
WikiLeaks.
Oh, WikiLeaks. Oh. Really? Assange?
Assange. Julian Assange is rumored to be the son of John Trump.
Well, the plot thickens, huh?
Yeah. Have you ever seen John Trump? And
you know what? Now that you say it, I can see it. Show it once you pull it up.
I'll pull up the John Trump, Julian Assange.
Yeah, and while you do that, let me finish telling you what about John Trump, because some other people have done it there, huh? Well, they mix Trump and so John G. Trump ended up working with the military in Europe on radar, then came back and got non-weaponized beam technology patents. So it was interesting, the connection there. Yeah. Okay.
So now that's not evidence of anything, but it sure is. I mean, they sure is a lot of similarities in facial structure and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean the overlap looks pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't even contemplated that, but the way they work. They hide identities, they breed, and then move these players around like pawns on the chessboard. So I wouldn't surprise me. It would just be, another one.
Just no different than Trudeau and
Fidel Castro's son.
Okay, exactly. Guys, if anybody has any more questions that you want to have for Raphael, the phone lines are open. If we don't get any more calls in the next few minutes, I'm going to cut it loose, and then we'll bring her back on
I think that's good. Yeah.
On number 2. So you got we got let's say 3 minutes.
We'll teach you how to be a weather expert. Come on back.
Exactly. So I want you guys to if you guys have questions, I want you to call in. Don't be afraid.
And maybe they'll be thinking about it when they get off the air, and they'll bring their questions to the next show. And because I'm sure there's a lot of processing going on right now because it's a bombshell.
I think people are generally timid because they don't want to appear as though they're sounding like a fool. And what I have come to realize is that everybody feels that way, and you don't want to ask a question that you're afraid to ask the question because you don't want to appear to be dumb. Yet probably the question that you have is the same question that a good half of the group has, but they don't also want to ask the question because they don't want to feel like they're a fool.
Yeah,
So,
and I all that I'm saying here is like years of putting things together. So I hope I didn't make anybody feel anything less than significant. I appreciated the last caller. These were great questions because they're all questions that we have, in our minds. I don't have all the answers. I'll let you know when I might have strong theories. I might know something about it. I might have but there's a lot I'm still trying to piece together. And I'm really hoping that more people will come on when we teach you how to do this Doppler radar stuff, and somebody who's smarter, more scientific, who will take all these pieces and take it to the next level. Cause I'm doing the best I can, just having studied this. And I studied a lot because I didn't know.
Here we go. We got a call coming in. Okay, hello. Who is on the line?
Hey, Ron. My name is Bill.
Hi, Bill.
To ask. Hi there. I follow
Hi,
you
Bill.
and Nino and most of the crew. I wanted to ask Raphael. Grown up in New Orleans, where it rained almost every afternoon. It got to be 90 degrees to 95. It would rain, cool off. That doesn't happen anymore. And I wondered if she thought that this might be a factor in that.
Well, you know that we had a drought. Are you in New Orleans right now?
I'm a little north of there now, but I did grow up there.
Okay, so you're well aware of the saltwater intrusion. Like it didn't rain. This was a drought this year, especially, right? And the salt, it was so bad that the Mississippi was not filling up, and so the saltwater was going back up as there was like saltwater intrusion. And now it's finally raining a little bit, so it slowed it down, and it might have actually ended it. But look, I have a video on my channel. I think the last one I did was looking at the rain to see if I can learn something more. Just, I'm getting back to it. I kind of took a sabbatical during COVID because I had a baby and I was fighting for freedom instead of exposing weaponized weather and dealing with the insanity of that stuff. But so ever since La Haina, I woke back up. So I'm starting again with a radar, and I was trying to see what they're doing in New Orleans to make it rain exactly. And I noticed there was a beam, and it wasn't linked to the Doppler dot. And so I followed that beam to the next Doppler, and it was not quite having to do with that Doppler. And so I went to the next state and the next state, and you could see it. It's a short video, relatively short for me. I'm long-winded, but and it went all the way out to sea. So they have these sea boats, and when it's a sea boat, I no longer can. Now somebody was asking me. I think the last caller was asking me maybe about the Bahamas, or were you about to ask me about the Bahamas? Once we get out of the States, because we have really high definition. The radar that you were showing, like when you click on it, there's a lot of definition there. Some radars, when you go overseas, you just get like this generic image that's just almost, an animation more than actual radar imagery. And then, if it's off at sea, that's what I say, once they send you off to sea or out to space, I can't do anything for you. I don't have that code cracked. I'm sure somebody else might be able to, but I don't. So I like the land radar, but I could see that there was a beam that went across several states that was feeding the rain, kind of intensifying whatever seeding they were doing otherwise. So the Doppler radar on the ground would be like small, letting the rain hit, right? It might do a little like convulsion or something just to pump some stuff a little bit. There's different ways to spin this puppy, but it wasn't it was this powerful beam that went across multiple space, and I had a horrible headache leading into that. So I don't know if that's related, but both my boyfriend and I did. So it might be the electric, because it's radiation. That's electromagnetic frequency. None of this stuff is healthy. I mean, sometimes people are really sensitive and they get like pressure headaches as the stuff goes. So they absolutely did. When was the last time there was a saltwater intrusion? In 1988. 88 is when the Doppler radar rolled out the last round.
Right.
I think they do these modifications and then they got to roll it out. This is not just hurricanes. This is your daily weather. They decide who gets the rain. And I think sometimes they might not mean any harm to one area, but it's just in the checks and balances of sending it to their target area that this one doesn't get it. And now it's this one's turn to get it or not. And obviously maybe I was thinking maybe because of the war in Israel, they said, "Oh, cancel the saltwater intrusion. We got the war in Israel." They're only juggling so many things at one time. And I have family in Israel, and I'm also, anti-Zionist, pro all humans on both sides of the fence. Just for the record, it's all horrible what's happening to all the innocent people, and it's always the innocent people that pay, and never the people behind playing, pulling the strings. But I don't know what motivates them but they obviously called an end to the drought. So are they two different players? Is it like one group, this group? I think all groups, I'm kind of a pessimist like this, but I would like to have some more hopium. I think that there's multiple players vying for the top of the pyramid, but we're always at the bottom. We might get a few more cherries with this guy than that guy, and it's good to offset the supreme evil from this one with that one. But I think they're just superpowers playing for the top dog position, personally. But maybe the demands of the competitor were met. No longer, maybe something was negotiated. All right, just end the drought. Don't know, but they ended it just like they were causing it, and we could see this. The high pressure.
Well,
every day.
We had the pile up on I-55, and that was smoke. There was a fire set, so maybe that accomplished whatever it was it wanted to do, and it's complete here. I will tell you that where I am, the clouds have been relatively normal for the past, I'm going to say 4 days. So it's for me, it's good news to hear. For others, it's probably not good, but your information checks out where I am.
How far north of New Orleans are you?
60 miles.
Okay.
Wait, you by Baton Rouge, you said?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So we used to watch the power plants pop off in Baton Rouge. I got to re-upload that video. Not all my videos have made it into my second YouTube channel, but a guy would capture him coming up in out of the power plants in Baton Rouge, and then it would feed into the cycle, and then it would rain and dump down in the afternoons. And I couldn't figure out, it was chemtrails didn't explain the rest of it. But when I figured out Doppler and I cracked the code further beyond the hurricanes, the high and low pressures, and then I could understand my weather. Then my weather made sense. And you'll see it. They're not HARP rings up in the sky. I mean, not that they're not using, I think they use HARP or a HARP-like facility, which is an ionospheric heater, which may not be HARP, might be another one, to heat up a region of the atmosphere, which is going to send the jet stream in that way. So you'll see like something pulling everything like on a conveyor belt towards a certain direction. But then you have the Doppler radars affecting the regional areas. And then, are you ready for this? We have evidence of hyper localized rain, not rain, sleet.
Oh, wow.
So a couple of years ago in Guadalajara, there was a sleet storm that made the news, but they didn't show the whole thing.
Yes.
There was another guy, Jamie Lee, who showed the whole thing from a different angle. I don't know how he got that footage, but it was actually, it was like coming up to the truck's doors. Like, I mean, it was high sleet, but it was only in the street. It wasn't on the sidewalks. Yeah. It wasn't on the roofs of the houses, and it was only for 2 or 3 blocks underneath the 5G LED lights.
Oh, and so, wow. Well, look, I just want to tell you, I see the ridges in the clouds, and usually that's when the clouds are moving out. And so I get it. I've seen that other places too. And so I get it.
That's generally Doppler radar.
What I'm looking at.
That's Doppler radar.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because HARP, imagine HARP. HARP can't be affecting the climate in every square inch of America, and yet everybody's seeing HARP rings. I mean, no, it's not. I mean, I don't care how many arrays they have. They really don't want you realizing that the grid is on the ground, because then they can't really undo it. I mean, they can put one out to sea, they can throw a few miscellaneous ones out, but that's their grid. So there has been a lot of gatekeeping around this issue, even within the chemtrail community, because a lot of the key players, like I say all the time, if you stole the weather, would you just allow anybody to like lead off the conversation, or would you make sure that the biggest, baddest boys were your boys, and that they would argue on certain things so that never the key element that would bring it all together could be discovered, especially with something that's not like, chemtrail narrative is safe because your plane, it spews its goo and then it's gone. So good luck proving which chemical came out of which plane. There's zero liability. But with Doppler radar, it's right there, and the radar capture is a matter of history. And once you figure it out, all they can do is they can try and say, that's crazy. They can insult, they can degrade, they can threaten, they can mock, they can ignore. They can change the language, call it a microwave facility tower at Eglin Air Force Base, so you don't realize it's Doppler. They can do a lot of tricks, but or they can show some weaker radar image, but the radar I'm capturing, you got to answer to. So I want the cat to be out of the bag before they move on to some other thing. But I don't know if they're using satellites, but they're using Doppler radar. So thank you for calling in, Louisiana.
Yeah, you bet. And I'm following you. I'm on Rumble, and I'll look you up on YouTube as well. Thank you.
YouTube is mostly my weather stuff, but because I don't want to, I'm NOLAbutterfly, user / NOLAbutterfly on Rumble. On YouTube, I'm let's see here if I can. What's my second YouTube channel?
I'm gonna put the link in the
NOLAbutterfly at NOLAbutterfly 2. Okay. Yeah, and all my weather stuff is on YouTube. I don't mix with jab talk too much. If you want the jab stuff or my local Louisiana activism, we held the mayor and the governor and the lieutenant governor accountable during the COVID jabberwackies. That's on my Rumble. And I put some of my weather stuff, but more extensive weather stuff is on YouTube, and I have to put up more, and I have to make more. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
For the word.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys bringing this to everyone's attention. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, guys. So that's we're at 6:20 in the evening. So if anybody wants to call in, now's your time. I'll wait till about 6:22, and then I'm gonna cut it off. So we have about 2 minutes. So I'd love to have somebody call in, but we're not gonna wait all night. I'm gonna let me put NOLAbutterfly's the thing in the comment section here, not the comment section, but yeah. Actually, I do have your channel. It's already in the description.
Okay, great.
So.
Okay. And you have my Rumble too?
I don't know if I have your Rumble.
Rumble.com/user/NOLAbutterfly.
Let's see.
But really, I'm going to get more weather stuff on my YouTube.
Rumble.com/user/NOLAbutterfly. There you are. All right. So let's go into the. Let's edit this.
I'm also, I have a lot of activism. Like I single-handedly, I had one other person there with me, but it was after I spoke a couple times that they delayed the rollout of 5G in New Orleans. They promised us a health panel because as I was realizing the effects of microwaves on weather, I was also living by a cell tower that was affecting my health. And like I was dying. I would lived a block away from a cell tower. And then I realized 5G was coming. And I'm like, wait a minute, 5G, microwave, cell tower. Ah! and I'm like, where's the city hall on this? Where's city council on that? And they were just happening to talk about it. And it's all under the guise of sustainability, but I call it the false sustainability narrative. So they promised us a health panel and they were very disingenuous. Let me just tell you something about New Orleans. We had this guy, Jason Williams, who's the district attorney right now. But at the time that I was opposing 5G, he was on the head of the Smart and Sustainable Committee. And he's the one that promised us a health panel, but then kept changing the date, denied us expert doctor, professor, EMF experts from calling in because we couldn't afford to fly him in. But the AT&T and T-Mobile and all that, these people were always there dressed and ready while they always knew when to show up. We were scrambling at the last minute to find out when these meetings were. We didn't get a voice in it. It was a sham health panel. We still had people that showed up. They gave testimony, doctors, radar technicians. They ignored all the science and they wouldn't show us a single study that proved 5G is safe. They just referred to the CDC's, the FCC's studies, but they didn't actually point out any particular one for us to be able to debunk it because it was all bogus studies. And we proved it. But it was so disingenuous. And so anyway, fast forward to COVID and Jason Williams is the district attorney. And then the crime gets so bad under his watch, right? You've got the defund the police movement and all that. But then we're told by police that they're like, you can call in New Orleans 911 and get, I don't know that these days, but at the end of COVID, you get an answering machine. I mean, how freaky is that in one of the most dangerous cities in America? And this was, I heard from police, we're told to sit on our thumbs. We're like, you get home invasion, good luck having anyone come take you seriously. Carjacking, I mean, until this woman got dragged down the street, it didn't even make a bleep on the radar. And Jason Williams is in charge of that. And then he comes back to the Smart and Sustainable and to the City Hall for some other committee they got. And he's saying crime is so bad, we need facial recognition technology. Well, isn't that convenient? Because there you were rolling out the backbone of the Internet of Things when you were on the Smart and Sustainable Committee. Then you become the DA. Like, this man's all over the chessboard. And you crime goes out the roof bad on your watch. And I told him, I was there and I said, well, that's a conflict of interest. And you see his eyes rolling in, doing the math on that. Yeah, you allowing the Internet of Things to, and then you allowing the crime to get bad. And then you're going to ask for facial recognition, technology. You can't even use the technology you have right now. How are you going to use anything else? I mean, it is definitely incrementalization towards, and that's one of the things that the bad weather calls for more technology so that we can better forecasting. But the better the forecasting, the worse the weather. You catching it? It's like this non-stop catch-22. It feeds itself. It's a beast, and it's not stopping unless human consciousness shifts.
Amen.
Because we're not.
Colin says, what I don't like is that if this is true, we are too compartmentalized in society. If you knew what 5G could do, would you put the towers up for a paycheck? And well, and talking about compartmentalization, the Air Force is the most compartmentalized branch of the military. And that is one of the reasons why it is the most corrupt, because the more compartmentalized you are, the more you can get away with, because the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Exactly. And they genuinely, so you've got elements of military who think they're doing good things, but they don't realize that they're actually bringing in harmful chemicals that are being utilized, to be put up in planes. They just don't know it. So,
oh yeah, I mean, and this took like all this discovery, like that's years of me doing like nothing else with my free time, because I was an obsessed freak for the weather stuff. Once I saw enough, and I know there's other people out there that see it, but then they got to feed their kids. They got to, and then I had a second child, and it was like, I mean, but I still feel like I have to commit a certain amount of time to exposing this. I don't have to do it all. I finally, I got to a place, I don't have to do it all. I just got to do what I got to do and find my peace in that, and then do the best for my family and do the best with keeping my sanity and enjoying life while I'm here. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to steal your joy and we got to hold on to some of that. So finding a balance, maybe not when you first find out, because then you're mad, then you go crazy with the depth of it, and then especially when I started out, I was alone. So, but I've been trying to build a community of people. And the good news is that there are more people, with each thing that they do, there's more people that become awake. Well, to the tricks and all that. So hopefully we can connect. The fibers will keep connecting. I'm hopeful.
You now have one person that you can connect with me, because I'm a weather freak. I'm a weather geek. So,
and I thank your audience too, and you, for sharing your audience. Because this is a lot. It takes me a long time to get it. I had a couple thousand subscribers on my last channel, and that's when it went down. But that was the vaccine stuff that did it. The weather stuff, I was targeted too. Now there's less targeting. I think they think that their agenda is so far along, and I'm censored enough as it is. I'm starting my second channel. I'm busy. I'm like, they underestimate the threat that we all. And I'm not a whistleblower, ultimately I'm a pattern recognition person observing radar. So they've knocked me off the air on radio shows when I was talking about, they followed me from my son's school back in the day, but I do feel like there's less heat just in general, because there's so many things going on. They're spread a little thin. And the agenda is rolling out. They're focused on some bigger stuff, but if we can get this out to a critical mass and let that go viral, and there's more people, like once maybe somebody out there in the audience is going to learn next time we do this show exactly how we're cracking the code. And then the thing is to look out at your weather, and then you'll come to predict. You'll know what the radar is doing by looking at your weather, and then you can track it, or you can see the weather, because the radar captures like an hour earlier, so it's not real time. So I still want to find real time radar. So I can. Sometimes you have examples of the radar acting and then the weather reacting. Sometimes it's more subtle, but you definitely, I know what the radar is going to look like when I'm seeing the weather outside. If it's a big, if the clouds are rising, and I know the blue is expanding.
Right.
Very, very simple. And then there's a few other things, but anyway, hopefully more people will be doing it and exposing it on their late channels or showing their friends and family, and it'll go viral. And hopefully through this channel and hopefully others.
Well, yeah. Well, what you and I need to do then is let's cut it off now, and you and I need to plot about how we're going to do part 2, and we'll make. I think we figured out a few kinks and how we can do this a little bit better. So there's no fault here, because we don't know until we try. So but next time it'll be a lot better. I'll have you send me the things, and we'll that way your the things that you try to share won't compete with your internet connection and cause you to freeze up. So, but I can tell you one thing. If you don't know about the weather and the science around the weather, you do not know how enormous a job Raphael has. The things that you have to understand and grasp to put this together is a lot. And so my hat's off to you, Raphael. I finished top of my class in weather school in the Navy, so I understand the study that needs to go into understanding weather and cloud types and all, and how everything impacts each other. There's so many things that are there's so many what am I trying to say?
Elements.
Elements that go into the weather. You've got pressure, you've got humidity, you've got wind, you've got clouds. And what type of clouds? People don't know that there's 27 different types of clouds. There's 9 cloud types in the low. There's 9 cloud types in the mid, and there's 9 cloud types in the high. And you have to know what those cloud types are. There's 27 different cloud types. People don't know that. And there's a lot of stuff that you have to know when you're dealing with weather and whatnot. So my hat's off to you, because this is what you have done is a severe undertaking. To get out there and try to comprehend. So
it's over a decade of just really being curious, not knowing, not pretending I knew, not being a smart ass, just really wanting to get as much as I can understand. And I'm sure there's plenty I don't, but I understand enough of it. And hopefully now your audience does a little bit more too. And you can rewatch this to let some of it sink in as a study too.
Amen. Absolutely. I absolutely encourage people to do that. So anyway, all right. Well, Raphael, thank you again. And let's plan on something. I don't know what you've got going on in your calendar, but we'll talk about that off air. But let's not make it too far along, because we want to we want to keep it. We want to strike while the iron's hot. So
yes.
So thanks again for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you again in the very near future. So awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. And next time, come with your questions. Don't be afraid to ask, because I offer the ability for you guys to call in for questions, because I want you to. I want you guys' participation. It's your participation is vital to the success of this, because a lot of times you guys have questions that other people don't. I know it. So anyway, that said, wish everybody a wonderful Monday evening, and we will be back tomorrow, or I'll be back tomorrow, and with another show. And we'll see you guys then. So we'll see you, Raphael, on the next time. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
In the very near future.
In the very near future. So have a great night, Raphael. It's great to see you again. Great to see you for the first time.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks again. Appreciate your time.
Likewise.
Have a good night, everybody.